One of the hardest things in writing is to get started. You know what you want to say, you just don't know how to say it. I remember back in the Express in those days, a lot of reporters to write feature stories, they get up and they walk around. Some of them, I won't say suck their fingers, but it's pretty close to it because they just can't put their fingers on the right opening line. And I've been having that problem today, really. I've been having that problem. But my thoughts have been prompted by a statement made by Mr. Bat. Mr. Bat, who lives in Manakal village in Kora, in his recent video, Lyndon Butties featured Mr. Bat. That feature was called Natural Trini Life, and Mr. Bat mentioned the name Ho Chi Minh. Now, I know in Trinidad a lot of people are not going to know who Ho Chi Minh was. So I want to tell a little bit about Ho Chi Minh. And this little get up here that I have here, it to me represents the US Rangers who fought in the Vietnam War back in the 60s. But let's talk a little bit about Ho Chi Minh. You know, when I joined the Express in 1967, the Vietnam War was raging. As a young sub-editor then, I confess, the news content that flew off the Reuters and Associated Press machines meant for me only shrewd editing and gripping headlines. I wasn't sensitive to the killing and the political struggles that went on in Vietnam. North fighting South, South fighting North, who's getting involved. The French were there and they were kicked out and whatnot. That didn't mean anything to me. I was too far from the conflict that was existing. When you think about Vietnam being about 10,586 miles by air travel from this Caribbean island of Trinidad, what would the Vietnam War mean to me, really? Perhaps if I was in the States and I was protesting the death of so many young Americans, black and white, Caucasian, I would have been perhaps there protesting. But in Trinidad, you know, a little beautiful island with Maracas Beach and doubles and pilau and a hot meal when you got home, steel band and other things. It didn't, like I said, it was just a question of doing a job, editing, sub-editing, and just writing headlines and fanciful headlines on the World News page about Vietnam. But Mr. Bat's mention of Ho Chi Minh prompted me to have a different view now, to look at the Vietnam War and people who really fought for their country. I was insensitive too to the question of sovereignty. Ultimately, a country's right to defend its independence from foreign interference or invasion. Definitely, I was snug in the belief that our land of the hummingbird would not, in my lifetime, see ruffled feathers nor broken nests. But 1970 came while I was at the Express, and it was a different story. Things were different in 1970. There were protests, there were marches all around. Some got busted heads. Curfew came. We were at the Express, and we had to be taken home privately by WASA vehicles, perhaps police vehicles, because there was a curfew on. And it was strange to see our island thrown into that kind of atmosphere. It was something we hadn't expected. I didn't live in the days of Tubal Uriah Butler when there was a riot in Faizabad. And this man was burned to death, this corporal, I think it was Charlie. But 1970 woke us up to the fact that whatever took place in the big world could definitely hit us here. And then came 1990, and you know the story of 1990. There was bloodshed, there was parliament upheaval, and Mr. Robinson got shot in his foot, and All kinds of things happened, and the Americans were supposed to be out there. So we are not prone from problems. I remember even in the time when Maurice Bishop came in to the Express, and he to me was just another headline also. And later on there would be that execution of Maurice Bishop along with some others, and you realize that the Caribbean was getting a little hot, so to speak. But it was still work, it was still headlines, it was still editing and whatnot. Ho Chi Minh's name cropped up increasingly in the news feed. Dressed in a three-quarter pants, he looked nothing like Cuba's Fidel Castro in his green fatigues. Ho Chi Minh was never photographed with a rifle or sidearm, but he was renowned as a cunning military strategist and politician. It must have hurt and embarrassed Western powers to be defeated by an Asian who looked as simple and as harmless as our Pau vendor in Tunapuna. But Ho Chi Minh was not alone in his struggle. There was a man called General Giap, and he was at one time former Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam, said to be one of the greatest military strategists of the 20th century. Giap at the time with Ho Chi Minh was the Viet Minh commander during the Vietnam conflict. In an interview, he spoke of their victory at a place called Dien Bien Phu, describing it as a victory for the people. While the concept of a people's war and guerrilla warfare are not entirely separate, he said, they are separate nonetheless. He emphasized that Dien Bien turned out to be the people's war. A people's war, he emphasized, is fought for the people by the people, whereas guerrilla warfare is simply a combat method. The people's war, he wanted the world to know, is more global in concept. It's a military, economic, and political affair, while guerrilla warfare is large-scale tactical warfare fought by large units. He went on in his interview, war for the people by the people touches independence, a unified country, the happiness of its people. By the people means ordinary people, not just the army, but all the people. When people are united, victory is certain. Giap died on October the 4th, 2013 at the age of 101. So you have a question here about the people's war. And this is what perhaps is obtaining now in Ukraine. It's not just a war that we just sit back and accept the outcome of. It's a people's war. We treasure what we have in Trinidad. We treasure the little upheavals, political at times, but we are still a free country. We are still a free country, and there must be pockets really of things that don't appeal to the general heart. But we are glad for living in a free, democratic place, and we just want our leaders to know that we need to have confidence in them. Confidence that will take us into a better Trinidad and Tobago. Well, time for me to get this Rangers hat off. Thank you.